Welcome to the Redirect Podcast. My name is Abigail Hewins.
And I'm Emily Rojas. The Redirect Podcast is a show where we shift the conversation back to books. We discuss themes from some of our favorite books and how those themes show up in real lived experiences.
On today's episode, we are creating teams and drafting our favorite banned and challenged books.
But before we get to that, if you enjoy the podcast, we would really humbly ask that you consider supporting us in a few simple ways. The first, as you know, you can leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or anywhere else to let you leave that 5-star review and let us know how much you love the show.
We would also love for you to follow us and engage with us on Instagram at Redirect Podcast. And if you really like the show, please share our show with a friend. It is so fun. The more friends that we have that are listening to the show, who talk back to us about the things that we shared. And it's just become a really fun community. So it's the best way to help us grow our community. We would love your help with that. And we love you. Let's get into the episode.
Let's go. That was so nice.
It's true, though. I feel like it's been a lot of fun to connect with people on a non-toxic or mostly non-toxic corner of the internet. It's like a happier place on the internet.
I agree.
So.
Hi, this is Emily popping in. If you're a longtime listener, you definitely have noticed, based on specifically Abigail's last name, that this is an older episode. And if you're a really long-time listener, you might have already heard this intro once before. We released this a while ago where we talked about banned and challenge books. And apropos of nothing, current events, it seemed like this might be a good episode to re-release right now when we both just have a lot going on, and it made recording a new episode in these past few weeks very much impossible. So we appreciate your patience with us as we're dropping this older episode for you to listen to, and we'll be back with a lot of more fun book-related new content in just 2 more weeks. So I hope you enjoyed this old episode, and if you have already heard this one, scroll back through our back catalog because there's definitely something you missed out on in the past few years that we've been doing the show. And while we may cringe at the audio quality and podcasting abilities of our very first episodes, they're still fun to go back and listen to. Anyways, thank you for being a fan. Thank you for listening. And like I said, we'll be back really soon with a lot more fun. Okay, now enjoy this episode and add these banned and challenge books that we love to your TBR for 2025. All right.
So we're talking about banned and challenged books.
What's the deal, Abigail? Tell us what's the deal about banned and challenged books. It's definitely an uptick lately, obviously, with the problematic people and states. So it's definitely, I feel like, been a hot topic as of late. But what's the deal? What's the deal with banned books?
The deal is that this is not new. So there is a history of banning books going all the way back to the 1600s. This is a tactic for controlling ideas in big populations. And there has certainly been a rise in banned and challenged books in the United States of America, where we live, over the last few years. So since 2020, there has been like a dramatic uptick in the amount of books that have been banned and challenged. According to the American Library Association, 48% of challenges take place in public libraries, 41% in school libraries, then 10% in schools, and 1% in higher education. And the majority of challenges, like people who are initiating the challenges, are actually not parents or patrons of the libraries. So making up that other group, there's 17% of the people who challenge books are political or religious groups. 15% are the board or administration of like a school system. Then the rest are librarians and teachers, elected officials, and then just other random community members who are not like relatives or guardians of school-age children, or who don't have a library card.
I think that's definitely becoming more popular. I previously worked in a school district and still work for schools, and I think that issue, like, I feel like when we were growing up, and obviously I had a more limited perspective of the world then, but I do feel like it was more parents in schools, like, having issues with specific books that their child was reading that they weren't comfortable with. But now it's become such a political issue that there are definitely activists, politicians, people who will, like, I don't know, I don't have the stat in front of me, but there was some recent studies that showed, like, 80% of the challenges were coming from, like, 5 people, you know?
Yeah.
There are definitely more so, I think it's shifting to those, like, bad actors or people coming into communities who have absolutely no ties to the community, to the school, to the library, who are kind of trying to either make a name for themselves or make this a political issue. So I do think there's kind of a shift in like, who is initiating these challenges and why.
Yeah, these aren't challenges that most of the time are led by, like, a big group of concerned parents. It's actually funded and, like, fueled by political groups.
Right.
People who are interested in shaping the worldview of a new generation of people, specifically when we're talking about school-age children.
Yeah.
And this is, you know, especially pertinent to talk about towards the end of Black History Month. It's a great time to chat about banned books, because a lot of books that are challenged and banned in this country are challenged and banned because they name that anti-Blackness exists.
Yeah.
Or it'll be a, you know, there's a book about racism. It's a book I'm not going to chat about today, but there's a book by Ibram X. Kendi called Stamped. And it was challenged because it specifically talks about anti-Blackness and not just racism in general. So like, the phrasing was, it's challenged because it is, like, it uses selective storytelling.
Right.
Which is just insane, because all books are selective storytelling.
Right.
Literally every book that's ever been written is a selective story.
Right. Yeah. It's very interesting. And actually, I wanted to, like, share a personal experience, not a personal experience, but semi-personal. But when I was in high school, one of the books I'm actually going to talk about in our draft, so I won't go into the details yet, but one of those books, and then another book, it's 10 Little Indians by Sherman Alexie. I believe that is the name, if I'm remembering all the way back to high school. And those were 2 books I read that were really formative in my life. They both deal, you know, one is about, like you said, racism and the Black experience in America, which I'll share more about that one. And then the one by Sherman Alexie is about Native Americans and their treatment. And a group of parents, the grade younger than me, kind of ganged together to request that these books were no longer on the reading list. And I remember that was so appalling to me, even as a high schooler. I think I was a senior and they were juniors when they would have been reading this, because it's like, these books really did change my perspective and shared a lot about different experiences of the world. And also, like, I was in the IB program, so these were books that were determined on, like, a national or international level. They weren't, like, the teacher just randomly picking. And so it was just so shocking to me. So it was, like, my first encounter with this, where I'm like, I don't understand. I don't know. It's so interesting, because it's like, I'm not a parent, neither of us are, but I can understand there are probably times when you might think my child's not old enough to read about certain content. Mm-hmm. Like, there definitely is graphic content in both of those books I've mentioned, but like, what's the fine line? Like, it definitely also seems like they picked the 2 books that were about racial issues, and not necessarily other books that might have had, like, equal inappropriate or whatever mature content in it. So I think there's obviously an ulterior motive there, but I don't know. That was my first experience with it, and I always think about that, and you know, about, like, what's the line, like, as a parent. I think to me it's like, you know, if you want your kid as a child not to read something because you don't feel like they're ready for it yet or whatever, that's one thing. But then to try to go get an entire district to ban a book or to take it out of curriculum because you have a problem with it.
You can always you can always make the rules for your own kid.
Right. Like, it just seems bizarre to me that you would think, I need this banned from the entire library, that no one can ever read it.
And that's odd. The difference between like we were saying, what is making it an individual choice for your family and what is trying to control ideas?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Another book that has been banned and challenged a lot, and it was a really formative book for me, was The Watsons Go to Birmingham, which is like a middle. Did you ever read that in school?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like a middle grades book about a family called the Watsons who go to Birmingham at the same time as, it's like during the civil rights movement. And, it's during the same time as, Dr. King is doing the March on Washington. Mm-hmm. Anyways, it has been banned and challenged for, quote, offensive language, even though there is not a single curse word or slur in the book.
Right.
Which I think just perfectly demonstrates what we're talking about.
Right.
It's not actually about removing it because they're not naming what the what the thing is that they really want to ban it for, but finding ways around it. And, yeah, I mean, it's a dangerous game to play. And this is part of the magic of books, is that if you're someone who doesn't have the privilege and advantages of being able to travel around the world or experience different worldviews, or you grow up in a pretty homogenous society or like a homogenous community, books are a way for you, an extremely easy and affordable and accessible way for you to experience other cultures. And it can open the world up to you. And so it's really sad that there are so many bad actors who are trying to cut that resource off from young people specifically. And that's why we felt the need to talk about it.
Yeah, I think that sums it up basically. So
using the American Library Association's list of most frequently banned and challenged books, the two of us chose 3 different books that we want to add to our quote unquote team of banned and challenged books. So Emily, I'll let you go first. What's the first book on your team?
Okay. The first book on my team is Native Son by Richard Wright, which is the book I was talking about earlier that was banned and challenged, I believe successfully, in my high school. And this is a pretty popular book. It was written in 1940. And it follows Bigger Thomas, who is poor. He's a young Black man in the 1930s in Chicago. And he is kind of living like a life of crime in essence. But eventually he does take a job with kind of a wealthy white family. But unfortunately, Bigger does end up murdering the daughter of the family and is the subject of a manhunt, and eventually kind of dramatically is arrested. And it becomes like his arrest and crime and defense becomes like a much bigger symbol. And he's like, you know, on the one hand, what he did is being used to kind of justify like violence and further racism against the Black community in Chicago, but also he is being used as kind of like a symbol of, you know, he shouldn't be charged with the death penalty because, you know, he had no other option but to end up this way, or like he's a kind of a product of his environment. And so it's kind of like, yeah, using what he did to show this kind of like both sides of how this one incident is being used as kind of a symbol for both racism and like anti-racism. And so I remember reading this in high school. Like the finer plot points are having to be refreshed by SparkNotes, so credit to them. But I do remember the impact it had on me, the discussions we were able to have in class. And I think that is honestly more important than any kind of like book you read. To me, like I was able to benefit so much more beyond just reading the book, which was impactful in itself, but also like discussing it with people. And like you said, like you are able to, like 1930, being Black, being young, being in 1930 Chicago in poverty, that's not a life I'm ever going to be able to understand or live, or like there's not even that many people left who did live that, you know, because it was such a long time ago. But you can read it and understand like, okay, obviously this murder is not good, but like also
his life maybe was set up in a way to direct him to this point that he had little control over or little like choice in the matter, you know, to end up to that point where that was even an option. And so I think it's just, like you said, interesting to not only read and experience different lives, but then also to get to discuss it with, you know, people in school was something I still think about. And I still have the book on my shelf because it was important to me. So yeah. And unfortunately it was banned. So not only is this a very commonly challenged book, but it was challenged in my school for sex, violence, and profanity, which again is obviously not the real reason because there are other books on the reading list that had all those things in it, but maybe centered around white protagonists that were not challenged by these same parents. So it definitely seems like there was a correlation on that one.
My first book is Looking for Alaska by John Green. This is, you know, obviously John Green is just a small indie author. Just kidding. He's obviously like a really popular young adult author. And Looking for Alaska is a coming of age story about a boy named Miles in his first year at boarding school. And it's about the friendships that he makes, particularly he falls in love with his friend Alaska. It is about self-discovery. It is about first love. It's about trying to fit in. It's about friendship, love, and loss. And there is a moment in this book that involves oral sex. And for that reason, it has been challenged and banned a lot. I can get maybe why some folks wouldn't want their kids to read this book, I guess. But what I will say as someone who's read this book, this is not like, this is the most clinical, like biological, uncomfortable description of what that encounter is like. This is not like in any way a romantic scene in this book. And I think to sanitize that from the book is to take away from like a true teenage experience. So John Green was actually interviewed about this being banned, and here's what he had to say. So he said, text is meaningless without context. And what usually happens with Looking for Alaska is that a parent chose one particular page of the novel to an administrator, and then the book gets banned without anyone who objects to having read more than just that particular page. The scene in question involves a very awkward and ultimately failed attempt at oral sex, which is described in a very cold and clinical language. In fact, the entire passage only includes one adjective: nervous. He continued, and then the book's next scene, two characters have a much more sensually described but passionate but much less sexually explicit interaction. So in context, the novel is arguing really in a rather pointed way that emotionally intimate kissing can be a whole lot more fulfilling than emotionally empty sex. And I don't know. I think this one's a little bit stickier, but for me, I don't know. I'm not a parent, but if I was, or if I could go back and redo my early teenage years, I would want the scariness around conversations about sex to be taken away and to have more frank conversations about the dangers of emotionally committing yourself to someone, being really more intense and more real than just some sanitized physical actions, and have seen depictions of that a lot more often. I read this as an adult. I didn't end up reading it as a kid, but I don't know. That one's an interesting one for me, and I wonder if you have a reaction to that.
Yeah, I really liked what he said about like the context, because I think that's exactly right. In again, my experience, that administrators or board members are just shown one passage or one page, and in that context, it might be inappropriate, but then you really need to take the value of the book as a whole. The context is really important. So I really like what he said about that quote. And I also think, like, again, yeah, we're not parents, so I would love if there are parents listening to weigh in on your thoughts of how you'll handle, like, your child and what they read. But maybe there is an opportunity also for the parent who is concerned about the content to read it with their child and have those conversations if you're really bothered by it. You know, what I think about is, and I'm not drafting this because of the very problematic author, but the Harry Potter books, you know, I wasn't allowed to read those growing up because my parents, like, bandwagoned, I think, and they're listening, so they can feel free to comment and disagree. But I think they just, like, got swept up in the hype of everyone saying it was evil or whatever. And eventually I did start to read it. And then my dad read them as well and, like, really liked them. And we were able to have so many great conversations about, you know, the themes in the book and what they meant to me. And, like, it was a much more beneficial experience than if they had just said, you can't, I mean, they did say you can't read these, and I did anyways. But I think that experience was just, like, way more fun and allowed us to have a great relationship and have these great conversations versus just, like, you can't read this and we're not going to talk about it. So I think obviously, like, there are probably definitely books I read that I was probably too young to read because of being an advanced reader. And that's valid. And I think you should, you know, weigh in on what you think your child is ready for. But also, like, there is probably opportunity to read with them and, like Abigail said, have these kind of conversations, like, as they're ready for it, as you're ready for it. But maybe that's an alternative to just ban stuff.
Yeah. Well, I think also it's like, if you're old enough, okay, by the time I was old enough to be in the audience that this book is marketed to, I already knew what oral sex was. And that's not because my parents talked to me about it. It's because, like kids at school talk about stuff. And it's just like, and so and that was in, like, you know, 2006. So this is like 20 years later. So, like, we have to, there's no way your kid hasn't heard about this. So it's whether or not you want to be part of the, I mean, whatever. This isn't a parenting advice podcast. No. But I just think in general, like, it's whether or not you want to be part of the conversation. It's not like they're about to learn something new. Right. But they're actually about to learn a perspective on it that's different than what they've probably heard or seen in other places. Right. And you have the opportunity to lean into that and be a part of it instead of letting, like, the extent of their knowledge be what, like, Kyle from third, you know, from third period thinks about it. You know, exactly. I mean, that is so unfortunate if you're just like, because at the end of the day, you can control media, you can control content, but you can't control everything, and you can't control what you are going to learn through osmosis. So wouldn't you rather lean into it and learn from a bunch of different diverse perspectives? That's my opinion. And if you don't want your kid to read Looking for Alaska, that's fine. Right. But that doesn't mean that everyone's kid shouldn't be able to read it.
Totally agree. Shout out John Green.
So. Yeah.
You're welcome on the pod anytime, John.
I know. And I'm really curious. I mean, I saw this one and it got me thinking about his other books, and I was wondering, I bet, what's that? The really famous one that we both like, The Fault in Our Stars. I wonder if that one was challenged too. I don't know. Anyways, back to you, Emily. What is the next book on your team?
I feel like if there's a book out there, it's been challenged.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. The next book on my team is probably, I don't know. I cite this as probably my favorite book ever, but, you know, it's been a while since I read it, but it's A Lesson Before Dying by Ernest J. Gaines. And this book, I honestly have never cried so hard at a book. I can barely talk about it without getting emotional, but I read it in the 10th grade for school, and it is about a young man who is Black in the South. It's like fresh post-slavery, so there's still like sharecroppers, and it's a rural farm setting, and this Black man is involved, not a part of, but a bystander in a robbery that ends in both the robbers and the robbie, the store owner, being killed. And he's the only one left, and he was completely innocently there. But because he's Black and because he's there and this is, the South, he is arrested for the murder and tried and sentenced to death. And so this book follows the local school teacher who teaches like the children who work on these like farms. And he is contacted by the man who's in jail by his grandmother, who's friends with this teacher's grandmother. And she asks him to convince him to walk to the electric chair to his death with his head held high as a man, because he keeps like saying, I'm just a hog. No one, like, I am not a person to these people. I don't matter. I'm going to like crawl to my death, basically. And so this book details like the process of this teacher trying to like have these philosophical conversations with him and basically tell him that he needs to like he is a symbol and he's not going to live. He's not going to make it out of this one, but he needs to go to death with his head held high and show like the police and the justice system that they can't break him and that he like is a person. It is very devastating. It's like horribly devastating. And I think about it all the time, and the last sentence or the last part of this book, like, will break you. Every time I think about it, it's just devastating. And there's a lot of, like, religion in there as well, because there's, at the same time, a priest who's, like, really concerned with this man's, like, soul before he dies and saving him. And it's, like, this kind of tension between the two people who are visiting him in prison. And anyways, it is so good. It honestly is my favorite book maybe I've ever read. And anyways, it was banned for profanity, cursing, and inappropriate subject matter.
Are you kidding me?
Yes.
Profanity and cursing? Are you kidding me?
No. And
oh my gosh.
Basically, this is an anecdote from 2018 in a Florida school that this parent requested a district-wide ban. A committee reviewed and decided to keep the book, but then the next day the superintendent banned the book. So that's obviously just one district. It's happened other places. I'm very fortunate that I read this book in school and no one banned it. So, but I mean, this book, like I said, I can't even talk about it without getting teary because it impacted me so much. And I think definitely I was young when I read this. I'm really fortunate, honestly. I had teachers who exposed me to a lot of books. In 9th grade, I read The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison. I read this book. Mm-hmm. I read Native Son, like I talked about.
Yeah, The Bluest Eye is like on the top of every list for like the last 20 years.
And I think I need to reread it because I definitely think I don't know that it's a 9th grade book. I think it might should have been waited till I was a little older because I don't know that I was ready for that kind of content, but I was kind of a probably naive 9th grader. But anyways, I would love to reread it as an adult. But I think the ability to be exposed to those kind of books, I just feel really lucky. And it makes me sad to think about people not being exposed to these types of books. Not everyone doesn't read every book. You know, there's a lot of books I never read in school that other people might consider classics. But I think we can't ban books like this because like reading these kind of books has made me more empathetic and more thoughtful and has taught me more than, you know, like a history class about racism in America can only teach you so much. But then to read something that is so emotionally like resonant like this book was for me and really shows you like the actual experience of a person, of a human being, even if they're not a real person, it's like this kind of situation could easily have happened. And so anyways, it just is really sad to think about these kind of books not being available for students. And I think it's really important that students are able to read books like this.
Well, yeah. And you think about now, like the increase in misinformation, conspiracy theories, dangerous ideologies, having a lack of education and a lack of perspective, just it actually is a disservice to yourself because it creates a lot of vulnerability to dangerous ideologies. And that is also what these political actors who are trying to ban books are trying to get us to do. They want us to feel like we're educated, but not have been exposed to diverse perspectives. so that we don't demand better, and that's
right.
That's part of this. So, thank you for sharing about that book. I really want to read it now, maybe when I'm in the right headspace for it.
Yeah, it's tough, but it's also not very long. So if anyone's out there, like, it's a relatively short book, and definitely be in the right space. Again, I've never cried so hard, but it is really worth the read, in my opinion. So yeah.
Okay.
What's your next one?
My next book is Persepolis by Marjane Satrapi. This is a book that we talked about earlier this year on the podcast. It is
I love this book.
Yeah, it's an autobiographical graphic novel about a girl, teenage woman, and woman, so all the different phases of her life, who she is from Iran, and she survived the Islamic Revolution in Iran and the war with Iraq. And she highlights through her story the devastation of war, her journey with religion, the different phases in her life, and how she really coped with them. She discusses times in her life when she experiments with different political viewpoints, with drugs, with different philosophies, and her experience as a girl living in Iran with parents who were activists and counter to the Islamic Revolution, and someone who ended up having to live abroad from her parents and navigate the world alone. And these are really, really heavy subjects, obviously, and they become so much more digestible and accessible to the average typical person, because they're in a graphic novel format. Which is just really helpful. And it's a really, really important story. I think especially in a post 9/11 world for someone like me, growing up, white evangelical Christian in Georgia, during 9/11 and in the years following, I had this very messed up view of Muslim people and really anybody who lived in the Middle East. And I think that, if like my personal opinion, is that's at the core of why this book is banned, because it creates empathy, and you see a more whole perspective about who brown people are, who Muslim people are, and the diverse experiences like within a single culture. Like, it's just it is an unfortunate piece of misinformation that I feel like I was fed, or that I got the impression of, either directly or indirectly, that there was just like singular experience from these, quote unquote bad guys who attacked America. And I think that's why this book is really, really important. And also because many pieces of what Marjane experienced as a young girl in Iran become eerily similar to what some parts of the United States have become in terms of their relationship to evangelical Christianity, and how those belief systems are being forced upon people in a very legalistic way.
Very, very timely.
Very, very timely. Like, no wonder you don't want people reading this book. Yeah. Whatever. Anyways, this book was officially banned for, quote, gambling. I don't even remember gambling in this book. Offensive language, and political viewpoint, and additional reasons were politically, racially, and socially offensive.
Also, to be clear, again, this is someone's life story.
This is literally her life. You cannot argue with the events of her life. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, it's not made up to be if it's politically offensive or racially or socially offensive. I mean, that was her life, so I don't know what to tell you.
It's objectively an offensive thing that happened. I don't and also she doesn't ever characterize another race that is not her own,
right,
in any sort of positive or negative way. There is literally no characterization of anything. Like I don't gambling. That's ridiculous. I don't remember that. Anyways,
Yeah.
In graphic depictions, yes, it's a war. There were graphic depictions of war.
Yeah,
that
of
is,
war.
but also like, I don't know. My opinion is that you don't get to have two sides of that. You don't get to have your cake and eat it too. You don't get to train up children to be like little American war robots and like pledge allegiance to the United States under any circumstance and not ask questions about our military activity. And then also be like, don't talk about wars that happen in other countries. Like, you know, anyways, I am sad that I didn't read this till I was an adult. And I would recommend it to a high school student. I think it's appropriate for high schoolers. I mean, I don't know, some really big ideas that I don't know if like an elementary or even early middle schooler would be ready for. But yeah, I totally think this is an appropriate book for high schoolers.
Yeah. And I read this in high school. And again, it shaped my life for sure. And I think it's also really critical because this is like a subject or a time in history and a region of the world that we really don't learn about, probably for good reasons.
We don't learn about this stuff.
So I just had no idea. Yeah.
In our public school system, I did not learn about this.
No, never. Never. And so I think stuff like that is really important because, you know, like the history of the Middle East really directly impacts a lot of stuff that we're involved in.
No shit.
And so I think, it's like, this is a really fun way for, not fun, but like the graphic novel, like you said, makes it very accessible is probably a better word for high school students to read and to learn about history through the eyes of like one person. I mean, this to me is no different. We're letting kids read The Diary of Anne Frank, although that is also a banned and challenged book. But it's a similar vibe of like, you can get a perspective on a big historical event that is way more accessible for a child or a young adult because of the way it's written and it's through one person's eyes. And so I think, very similar vibes.
Yeah, when you are able to reduce someone's like humanity to just like a people group that they're a part of, and you see that people group as being the bad guys, which like I will, you know what, I can only speak from my personal experience, but from my upbringing, indirect messaging and maybe some direct messaging told me that that was true. So you can make lots of excuses about loss of life and, you know, genocide and things when you reduce a human being to a big characterization about the population they belong to. And I think that's why books like Persepolis are really important.
Absolutely. Totally agree. It's a great book.
Yeah. All right, Emily, what's your last pick?
Last one. What can I say about this book that hasn't been said on this podcast multiple times? But it's Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret by Judy Blume.
This is the best book of all time.
Banned for religion and sexuality.
That is so stupid.
Boo.
What sexuality? What are you talking about?
What they mean by sexuality is literally just the experience of being a girl. That's
it. Is it because she gets her period?
I think that's it. That's the only
having a crush on someone. This is insanity.
Talking about boobs, growing, like wanting bigger boobs. I'm sure
it's banned because she grew up in an interfaith home. That is insane.
Yeah, and this book to me, like I wish I had read it as a kid again. We've said this a million times. I like wasn't not allowed to read it. I just thought it looked boring based on the title. Thought it was gonna be like she's just praying or something the whole time, respectfully. And so I remember I love Judy Blume. Like I read a lot of her books, but this one I was always like, no.
If there's like one small thing I could go back and change about my childhood, it would be that I read this book.
Yeah, because this book, I mean, again, we have a whole episode on this that we've released twice, so go listen to it.
Please, I'm begging you.
Read the book. But I just will say, I mean, this book, if you don't know, if you missed those episodes, it's about Margaret. She's growing up. Her mom was raised Christian. Her dad is Jewish. And so she kind of realizes everyone else around her like has a faith, and her parents kind of raised her without one. And so she's kind of like trying out different faiths. She goes to churches with her friends. She goes to the synagogue. She goes all around. And it's also about her growing up with her friends and having crushes and going through puberty. And This book was set in the 70s, which I did just Google while you were gone. It was set in the 70s, and it's still so relatable. Like, it felt like it could have been written about me and my friends. And so
I know.
if you haven't read this,
The
and you're a
female
girl,
experience is universal.
It is. It really is. That's what this book taught me.
Look,
but when
March
you're
is
growing
coming up.
you think you're
It's
weird.
Women's History Month. This is the perfect time to read this book.
This is a book to read. So, yeah, when you're a kid, when you're a young girl at least, or when I was, you think you're weird. You don't know that everyone's having the same experience as you. And if I had read this book, it would have been like, oh, everyone also feels weird and like unsure and self-conscious and is not ready for where they are in life. Either they want to be more mature or they're scared of how fast things are going. And like, I just wish I had read it. So this book should not be banned. I wish I had unbanned myself because I just thought the cover looked boring, but you know, maybe update that design, get more kids reading this book, including boys, you know, maybe, you know,
dads,
empathy.
the power of
Dads.
a dad reading this book, you know,
If you're a dad of a teen or tween specifically, you need to read this book. Like, desperately. And the dad in this book is so nice. The movie's so good. You can watch the movie too. I will allow it because the movie is a great adaptation. So if you don't want to read the book, you can still watch the movie.
yes.
Okay, what's your last one?
My last one is The Big Kahuna, The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood. Everyone knows something about this book, but this is a book, dystopian story, but really not that far away from our current reality. In a fallen United States of America where women have been enslaved as reproductive slaves, I guess, for like the elite. And it is the recovered diary of one of these handmaids who goes by the name Offred. And this book has been challenged for, quote, vulgarity and sexual overtones.
Fair.
And you know
probably.
what? Right on the money. Yeah, it is vulgar and by nature, and there are sexual overtones. However, this book is so near and relevant to what is currently happening in the United States of America.
More by the day.
IVF being extremely restricted in the state of Alabama, challenges coming to states who offer reproductive health care to women from out of state. Like, it is getting crazy out here, guys. So this book is not banned just because there are sexual overtones. If that was the case, there are so many other books that should be banned that aren't, if we're using that criteria. This is banned because it's too close to reality. And like, the actors of patriarchy in this country don't want us thinking about what could happen and what might be happening now that would lead to a reality that deeply restricts freedom of choice, freedom of religion, freedom of expression, freedom of speech. Obviously the show is good too, but the book is really important and like didn't receive like the love in its time until the Hulu show came out. But it's really important, and it's particularly important that we educate young people about the importance of reproductive freedom and reproductive choice and what it means to be active in these conversations in the public arena and not just let other people passively make these decisions for you, because there's a lot on the line. So
yeah. And I think, I mean, I've never read the book, but I have watched the show. And I think, you know, like in everything that happens where something you once had, the ability to do is taken away, it's important to like ask questions and evaluate that, like whatever maybe your thoughts are, because like I think the IVF decision is a perfect example of that, and we're not a political podcast. But I think it's important to say, okay, like, a lot of people I think are thinking, well, I was pro-life, but I didn't mean it like this. And so I think it's important to just, anytime the government is taking things away from you that you once had the right to do, that might be worth asking questions about. And I think this kind of takes it to, like, obviously the max dystopian level in this book. But what I really liked about the show, and I'm assuming the book has some similar vibes, is like you can see how it started off innocuously and people let things slide, and then how it gets to this place of being dystopian. So I think, you know, it's always good to be aware.
Yeah, and I think it brings it back to this, what we started the conversation of this podcast off as, talking about individual choice versus making rules that impact everyone.
Right.
You know, you can make personal choices about your ethics and your life and not force them upon other people.
Sure.
And that's great. Yeah. That is one of the beautiful things about America that we're supposed to have. It's the ability to make choices about our own lives. Yeah. So
stop banning books, you guys. Yeah. I don't think any of the book banners are listening to our pod. Probably.
I don't think so.
Would have scared them off a while ago, but if you, I think what's really important is if you are on the positive side, like, you have to say something, you know, because if you see this happening in your child's school or in your community or in your library, like, those people who are banning books and causing these challenges are so outspoken, and they are organized, and they are infiltrating, like, every level of politics with a specific agenda. And so, like, it doesn't take that much to just show up to meetings or to speak out in the favor of books that are being challenged. And so I would encourage everyone to consider that, because I think it is a very small minority of people who are trying to ban these books, but they're often the loudest, and makes it hard for people in charge to, like, you know, say, I'm not going to do this if they feel like they're getting all this pressure. So
totally,
it's really good to be a supporter.
And I think like another even smaller way and easier way to contribute to making sure that books are available to everyone is that if you don't have a library card, and if you're not a patron of your local public library, then you really should be, because when it comes to like input from patrons, like if you don't have a library card and you don't use the library and you don't check books out, then your impact doesn't go as far.
Yeah, totally.
So support books that are being challenged, check them out from libraries, be involved in library programming. Also, you should just go to the library anyway, because why are you guys buying every book you read? I mean,
shout out.
Jeez Louise.
Stop doing that.
Literally.
I mean, you know, support the authors.
Support the authors.
Like, you don't have to. You don't have to. There's another way.
You don't have to overconsume like this. Books are free. They are literally free. Oh my gosh. So anyways, support your local library. That's a really great way. And also, like, vote for members of your school board who are chill and think that people should be able to read everything.
So critical.
With their parents' consent.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Obviously.
All right. Cool. This was a good conversation. I'm glad that we did this episode.
It was great. It was really fun. Do you have anything that you've read lately you want to share?
I mean, here's the thing. I have been I've been traveling a lot. So I had like a lot of like plans to read a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I feel that.
But it just really, I don't know, it just really threw me off. But let me
feel you.
See.
I can share something while you think about it.
Okay.
I just finished a sequel to a book that I loved, that I've recommended before, but it was Everyone on This Train is a Suspect by Benjamin Stevenson.
Oh yeah, he's the guy who did
Everyone in My Family Has Killed Someone. It's the original. And so the protagonist is Ernest. I can't remember his last name. My gosh, I'm so bad with the names. Anyways, the protagonist is Ernest, whose last name I don't recall. Cunningham, maybe? And he, you know, in the first book, he starts off as he's like a guy who has made a sort of a living writing like Kindle free books about self-published, about how to write a mystery. And he has these rules like, you know, the killer has to be someone you're reasonably familiar with.
Oh, yeah.
It can't
So
just be a random person.
It's the same main character as the first book.
Same main character.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Got it.
Yeah. So that's the first book. He introduces himself that way, and then he ends up living out the plot of an actual serial killer and having to solve the mystery. And it was so funny. This is the sequel. In the sequel, he has written this first book, which was Everyone in My Family Has Killed Someone, and he has been invited to go to a crime writers festival, which is set on a train. And for like it's like the 50th anniversary or something of this festival. And so they're doing this whole big thing on a train. There's several other writers there. And he's trying to think of a plot for his second book because he got a book deal, but he doesn't know how to write fiction because the first book things happen to him. And then conveniently people do start dying. So he's able to write a second book about this murder. And these books are like, to me, if you don't want to be scared, but you want to read a mystery, these are the books for you because they are so funny. The author is like writing directly to the audience. So there's so many like little asides where he'll be like, okay, I'm going to figure this out in chapter 31 or
I remember that from the
stuff
first
like
one.
that. So, and it's just really, it's a great time. So this is a super fun read. Again, like, I think, some people like the mystery. They like the murder mystery, but they don't want to be creeped out. They don't want the like scariness. This is the anecdote to that because they're so funny and like obviously there is murder, so there's that, but like just the tone of the novel is really light and like fun. So I think it was a great sequel. And I'm like, I don't know how long you can believably continue to have a character who's involved in so many murders without like it being suspicious. Like, why are so many murders happening around you? But I do hope that this series continues on for a long time because it's very enjoyable and I love the characters.
Yeah. What I want to say back about that is I need to actually read the second one. The first one I listened to on audiobook and he's Australian.
Yeah.
And the Australian accent was so intense.
Yes.
And distracting. And this is no hate to Australian people. I was just telling you the other day that I really want to go to Australia now.
Yeah.
But it was so much to listen to this book in this very strong Australian accent. It was just so distracting to me. So, maybe read this one, not listen.
Yeah. For some reason, I've listened to like a ton of Australian audiobooks. So I feel like I have gotten the hang of it, but it is a lot to decipher. It's just a tough accent.
Yeah.
So if you're not familiar with it. So I think, definitely, I think read this one. But it is kind of fun because in the audiobook, they're like certain things will change. Instead of being like 50 pages from now, this is going to happen. It'll be like 10 minutes from now, this is going to happen.
That's fun,
so it's very fun. But yeah, definitely a great book to read. So good morning. Okay. Do you have anything to share?
I do. So yeah, this isn't a book I'm finished with, but that's okay. That's still working on it.
I do that all the time.
Yeah, I have been reading a couple books right now. One is Raiders of the Lost Heart by, hold on while I remember the author. It is a romance book about archaeologists. And
oh my God.
I know. It's so cute. Oh, shoot. Hold on.
You're good.
It is called, I'm so prepared for this podcast. Okay. It's called Raiders of the Lost Heart by Joe Segura. This is super fun. It is cute. It is about, it's enemies to lovers. It is academia. They're in the field. They're doing archaeology and they're looking for this like thing in the Mexican jungle. It is a woman of color author and a woman of color main character. So that's amazing. This year I've been tracking, not to hit a particular goal, but just out of curiosity when I actually track it, what is the gender and the race and ethnicity and sexual orientation of the authors I'm reading? And it's made me be like a lot more conscious about going out of my way to speaking of reading diverse perspectives, to read diverse perspectives. Anyways, it's really cute so far. I'm like 3/4 of the way through and it's a lot of fun. And I feel like I'm learning stuff about archaeology
Yes.
And I just love that. It's like you had me at academia, you had me at enemies to lovers. You know, I love that.
Yeah, I already have it on hold. I'm so down.
Yeah, it's really cute. I mean, is it amazing? I don't know if it's the best book I've ever read. Wow. If it's the best book I've ever read, I don't know. Is it extremely cute and fun? Yes.
Yeah, that's all that matters.
Yeah, that's all you need.
That's all you need. So.
And then I'm still reading The Poppy War, which I think I said on the last podcast. It's been slow going, but it's really good and I'm really enjoying it. So recommendation to read The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang. I think I can go ahead and say it's good.
Awesome.
So there you go. Hopefully I'll have something new to report by the next time that we record.
Yeah. It's been a while. But we'll see you guys next time. And bye.
Bye.